Thanks very much. Okay, well, so welcome everyone, and thanks for joining us this afternoon. As Barbara mentioned, this is the first in a series of 3 webinars on the pilot called Pilot Cities Portal Proposals, which launched today. I'm just going to do a little bit of an introduction, some housekeeping as per usual. So the first thing is to say a big welcome back to everyone from summer. I hope you've had good vacations and are rested for the work ahead. The call did launch today. Specifically, the core guidelines have been updated and be published. The call and grant management module is now open for people to register and start looking around. And there's a suite of supporting documents also published on the Net Zero Cities website that you can also access and familiarize yourself with. As I said, there are a suite of webinars this week. There's 3. Today's is the first, which is a bit of a refresher on the ambition and the approach of the Pilot Cities program, and then some technical information about accessing the grant management portal and submitting your application. This coming Wednesday, at the same time, we'll have a refresher on the eligibility and assessment criteria, where we'll take you actually through the call form and the elements of the application form itself, so you can see how these things line up together. And on Thursday, we'll have a specific session looking at monitoring, evaluation, and learning and impact. So we hope that you also register for those and look forward to talking to you then about them. So this webinar, just to reiterate, is for both mission cities and non-mission cities. This Net Zero Cities call for pilot cities is an open call under Horizon 2020, to which cities from the European Union member states and Horizon 2020 associated countries can apply. It will cover, firstly, my colleague Joost will give us a refresher on the ambition and approach of the Pilot Cities program. Then I'll come back in with some information and some updated documentation and where you can find that. And then finally, I'll show you how to register with the portal and a quick live demo of what a proposal looks like and how to navigate it. Just an important point for this, as we do have the 3 webinars this week, we've tried to make sure that they cover the various topics which are important for submitting an application that is complete and full to this call. But we ask that you keep your questions in the Q&A to the topics of these specific webinars. So if you have questions around criteria and assessment or impact, please do keep those in mind for the webinars later this week. Just a quick note on the structure, 10-15 minutes introduction and refresher by Joost, and then some time for Q&A on that. Then I'll take us through the documentation that has been updated and the system, and that will be about 20 to 25 minutes. And then we'll have Q&A for as long as is needed, depending on how many questions we do have. The event is being recorded, and please do use the Q&A functionality that Zoom provides to ask your questions. And it's also always helpful if you rename yourself using 3 dots just next to your name window, to include your city and department, so it's easier for us to identify who you are, where you're coming from, and what it is that you do. So you can see the Q&A, which is down, I think it's usually the bottom of the screen. That is different from the chat function, so please do try and keep your questions in the Q&A box, because that's the best way for us to be able to manage responses. If you don't ask your own questions, but someone else asks a question which actually you really want the answer to, and you can then vote it up. So using the thumbs up button, as you see on the right picture there, to make sure that question doesn't go unanswered. So today, it's myself and Joost Wenderman from Dark Matter Labs, who's going to do an introduction in a moment. And I'll hand over to him now.
Thank you, Will. And first off, there were a couple of moments when the sound that I heard from Will was a little bit grainy. So I'm not sure if that was an issue on my side or on his side, but do let me know in the chat if you have any trouble hearing me. Well, very good to have so many people back in this refresh webinar. Like Will already said, you may have just come back from a holiday or have been back a little bit longer already, but the call for pilot is open as of today. And yeah, we felt it was a good thing to do, to refresh, not just on the practical practicalities, but also on the why behind this pilot city program. After all, life is full of pilots, and how is this different? Why did we choose this approach, and what is particular about it? So if we move to the next slide, there's going to be a fair amount that I'm covering today that that has also been in previous presentations on this on the topic of the pilot cities program. I'll be very brief. It is really a refresh. If you haven't been at the previous webinars, the recordings of those are available both on the Net Zero Cities website and in the call guidebook, Will, if I'm not mistaken. So you can look back at these old webinars. So why are we doing this, and what are we hoping to see? The European Commission's aims with the mission and also with the Net Zero Cities mission platform are, amongst other things, to support large-scale pilots to deploy and scale systemic solutions, combining a whole range of innovations and new business and governance models to underpin the climate transition. And what we have been very clear on from the start, and what also the mission board who initiated, co-initiated all this, has been clear on, is that the main obstacle to climate transition is not a lack of climate-friendly and smart technologies, but the capacity to implement them. And that the present, often silo-based form of governance, designed and developed for traditional city operations, cannot drive that ambitious transition. So a systemic transformation is urgent. And therefore, in that spirit, we are looking for pilots that really take that to heart, that is this systemic transformation ambition. And therefore, we're not looking for single solutions, but really for innovative approaches to accelerating implementability at scale as a whole. So we know that there's a wide range of excellent R&D, R&I solutions to be unlocked. So really, how do we grow the capacity best to implement and to combine them? And really, what the pilots aim to enable is for you to have a deeper understanding and ability to address those systemic barriers that we all, across different cities in different contexts, have to overcome. If we move to the next slide. Thank you. And the systemic barriers, and therefore the levers for change, are several and multiple. And in your city, you will come across or have come across some or many or all of these. And whether that is lack of developed business models for integrating and combining and unlocking a range of technical and other solutions, a lack of investment capacity, underdeveloped governance and participation mechanisms, regulatory issues, or supply chain problems and skills deficits, or outdated data tools and what have you. There's many different barriers, and often they act in combination to make transformative change and the larger scale implementability to make that harder. So really, what we invite you to do in this Pilot Cities program, Call for Applications, is to reflect on which ones, probably a combination, are most relevant in your city when trying to accelerate learning and impact. If we move to the next slide. And in all this, what we're trying to avoid, I already said it, is applications that focus only, well, first of all, applications that only focus on a small subdomain of your overall city emissions profile. Your application needs to be relevant for the climate transition in a significant way. And we've put this generalized image of how a city's emissions profile can break down to the right here, with it being very clear that there are certain elements in your emissions profile that are likely to be greater than others, and to be aware of that in your application is going to be very important indeed. Equally, we're looking to avoid isolated actions that are not sufficient to create wider shifts. the whole mission is about overcoming these systemic barriers, and again, isolated actions without connectivity in terms of all the things we said: governance, finance, business models, regulation, participation, etc., will be less likely to achieve those results. So applications that focus on a very particular solution without addressing how it may scale are less likely to get there. Now, getting to scale may mean very different things depending on the issue, of course. Getting to scale could be about a business case around something, could also be about different things, right? So we're not being prescriptive in what getting to scale might mean. But I just want to kind of give a short example of the kind of issues that we've seen with pilot projects and innovation projects in the past that we'd like to avoid. I'm reminded here of what a colleague once mentioned about another EU program where a particular sort of final conference around an innovation project was held, something around energy innovation at neighborhood scale, and after years of work, the results were presented in this kind of final conference. And at the end of this conference, in sort of a panel discussion, someone asked about the business model and the business case for this project going forward, and to really go beyond the demonstration of the particular technology into wider society. And apparently, I wasn't there, but I was told that the different people from the consortium, from the project consortium that were on stage, sort of looked at each other somewhat uncomfortably, and kind of tried to guess who would answer that question, and actually who was responsible for that wider business case in the first place. And genuinely, there'd been years of very good technical work, but very little thought about that, and they literally, at this very late stage in the project, had to start from that. And no, that might be fine for some innovation projects, although I doubt it, if I'm honest, but it's certainly not fine here. So that how this reaches right across your city and hits the core trajectory of what your city needs to achieve to hit the 2030 target is of critical importance. Right, and moving to my next slide. And if it sounds like I'm repeating myself, that is because I think it's really important to get this clear. And on the one hand, we're not being prescriptive. The mission goal is what matters, and what you need to do and what you need to test in your city to unblock these systemic barriers in your city. That is what matters. Now, we think that is probably always about different levers of change and portfolios of multiple synergistic actions. But again, we're not prescribing how you do that. We also imagine that successful approaches may have relevance for more than one emissions domain in the city. But if you think that you need to focus on one and can build a valid case for that, that might also work. Like I said, replicability matters in terms of really learning about what pathways of overcoming these barriers could look like. It's never about copy-pasting technologies, but seeking in your proposal to also generate lessons and insights that other cities can benefit from across the mission and wider is relevant. So your honest, clear, and ambitious understanding, incredible understanding of the issues you feel stuck on across the city, and every city, in my experience, feels stuck on something, but even those cities that are comparatively speaking much closer to the 2030 goal than others, even they tend to be stuck on something. So that understanding of where you are stuck on and what you need to do next and what you need to test next to overcome that is so relevant to this application, and the application form also asks questions that clearly reflect that. And perhaps finally, perhaps as a side point, but it is important, the mission is very, very serious about multi-stakeholder approaches as having a key to overcoming the issues that we've faced in the climate transition so far. That's been clear right from the start. It's with citizens and with other stakeholders across urban society. And so once again, we really invite you to see this as an opportunity, not a burden, to really involve multiple stakeholders beyond the core public sector one. So that is perhaps one further emphasis I'd like to place. Okay, that was those were my main messages. Very happy to answer questions on them if there are any. So over to you.
Thanks, Joost. Yeah, so Sigrid, I think you are doing some managing and moderating questions. Has anything come through?
Yes, we have one question, and it's what about the timing for implementation of solutions? Would this have an impact given the urgency of finding alternative solutions to reduce fossil fuel demand in cities as well? Not sure which one of you two wants to address it.
Yeah, I think, and Will, please elaborate if you wish, and we can also come back to this in FAQs that already exist. But that's as this is all about achieving throughout the pilot studies program, throughout the duration of this pilot studies program, active learning that can be relevant and transferable to other cities, that whatever the type of actions is that you are thinking of needing to implement, that you need to be able to make headway with them, of course, during the pilot phase. So that dictates the timing for implementation, and of course having an impact can consist of multiple things. It can be about qualitative as well as quantitative factors. And part of the pilot studies program is focused on a theory of change, where we are also able to show and make sense together of early changes that enable us to understand our ability to achieve later stage changes and ultimate objectives. So recognizing that we're talking about complex adaptive systems, and that the path from A to B isn't always as straightforward, we will support you in the pilot studies program on creating these kind of indicators of what success in an early stage might look like, and what impact that can generate also later down the line, in addition to immediate quantitative impact. So yes, that's a very good question. Sigrid, were you going to add on this?
Yes, so we have another question coming in. We are told to expect for initial round of work on the project plan in consultation with Net Zero City experts. Is that stage included in a 24 months project duration, or is it part of the project preparation grant agreement stage? So maybe Will can answer this question.
Sure, thanks. I think it's a very good question. We are planning for there to be what we will term a sort of a boot camp post-selection for the selected projects to work with us in refining their activities and refining their budgets, whilst we go through the process of also refining and putting together the grant agreements. So in theory, it's the transition period between the starts or the negotiations of the grant agreement, refining what will be in that as your kind of annex of activities against which the agreement is set. And then kicking off the actual implementation once the grant agreement is signed. So I can't say definitively if it's absolutely before or after, but there is this period of time where we'll work with you to refine that together and try to work through some of the complex questions and things that will have arisen in the process of putting together your application itself, actually. I hope that answers the question in part.
Thank you, Will. Then we have another question that's again a bit about the timing of the pilots. Citizens' engagement always takes time. 2 years project duration may be a bit over-optimistic. So maybe we can go into this a little bit more in terms of the more longevity of those pilots.
Yeah, I mean, I think just to build on what Joost was saying before, it is a 2-year sort of rapid learning program, and there of course will be questions around what kinds of what levers or domains that you will focus on, and whether they are more longer term technical or whether they're shorter term wins. But the emphasis there is about that learning process and about engagement, about the city finding a way and a pathway towards a much broader program of transition and well, effectively transformation towards the 2030 goals. So of course there will be aspects that will need to be planned for as longer term, rather than something that is fit in and done within just the 2 years. So I would anticipate, it depends on the project, it depends on the city, it depends on many factors, but that citizen engagement is something that might have more longer term goals and aims depending on the type of pilot activities, or it might have more shorter term ones as well depending on that. So yes, I don't know if there's anything to add to that.
No, I think I agree with you, and I would just again reiterate this idea of working with a theory of change, where you are clear that there might be early changes that you can see and plan for and be rigorous about, that are part of a pathway towards later changes and towards achieving the overall mission outcomes, right? And that is, on the one hand, a process that we can support with in the Pilot Cities program, but on the other hand, if you are able to think that through at this stage and be particularly sort of coherent about what you imagine would be the kind of changes that are visible and clear after 2 years of activities as you currently see it, then that of course is helpful. Yeah.
Thank you. And then we have the next question, which is any good practices that you could share as an example of an ideal pilot city? I guess we have examples in the guidebook, but maybe one of the two of you want to go into a bit more detail with this one.
For me, I don't think there is. I don't think you could define an ideal pilot city. I mean, it's going to be entirely specific to that city, their context, where they are, what they decide to focus on, and it would be, I think, unfair for us to try to actually decide what an ideal looks like. I think it's really important to look at the criteria and look at the guidebook and think about what it is we're asking for in terms of setting something up and how you're approaching this program. But it's not a case of there is a hierarchy of what is good and what is sort of bad. I mean, because within the actual cohort of cities we choose itself, we need to cater to a degree of diversity, not just in terms of geographic, but also in terms of where those cities and districts are on their journey, whether they are further down the road or not as far down the road. So that learning component, that learning how to do quickly and to test out a way of working in a city and to overcome the barriers that Joost was mentioning before is really the important thing to focus on.
Thank you, Will. Then our next question is regarding the stakeholder engagement. Regarding the multi-stakeholder approach, is it necessary to have all partners on board when we apply, or would it be possible to develop the partnership during the project? One of the main obstacles sometimes is the fact that we do not always work with all stakeholders.
I don't know if maybe you can build on this, Joost, if you want to, but I think we actually, in the question that we ask around stakeholders, we purposefully ask who is engaged and who do you plan to engage, knowing that these things aren't just always, you've got them set up and can go, but it's something that happens over time. So it's not that we expect everyone to already be at the table, but we want to know exactly who and how and why eventually.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's really important, again, to stress we are fully aware that we're operating in a complex, adaptive reality around these systemic barriers. I think that it's important for you to show an understanding and an honest assessment where you are at this stage and what you think that means. And yes, there is a degree of collaborative co-design also with Net Zero City Consortium members as part of the initial stages, and things may indeed evolve at that point. But it's more important that you show a clear understanding of what you think will be needed, than that every last partner has signed on the dotted line at this stage, as it were.
Yeah, I think also just remembering that you will learn through the 2 years, and you might identify additional stakeholders that you hadn't thought of before, and that isn't a deficiency in your application or your original thinking. It's just, it bears out that you are learning as you're doing, and that's important. Exactly,
and in that sense, again, we encourage everyone to really see this as an opportunity to accelerate the core aspect of the work towards ambitious, whether you're Mission City with a 2030 goal or otherwise, towards what's most relevant in your city. And of course, over time, new important potential partners will emerge in that work as well. Right? That's the nature of this work, and this is in that spirit.
Thank you, Joost and Will. Joost, the next question is for you, and it is: the emission domain on one of your charts differed a bit from the earlier one. Is this just a coincidence?
It may well be. I think I'm not the resident expert in net zero cities on this side of things, and this is a chart that we have used before, I think. If it's different, then it is a coincidence, and we can actually check this in and get back to you on the FAQs. There is a group of people in the consortium working on the precision of the data criteria and the sort of evaluation criteria over time. So we will be able to verify and confirm this.
Also, for the purposes of the call in the system, we have 6 emissions domains to effectively tag your proposal with and identify against. And these are closely aligned to the EU Info Kit for cities, which was published, I think, sometime last year. So we're lining these things up with other work, and as Joost said, there's a whole work stream of activity on indicators and MEL and these kinds of things. But it's also to say that when you are tagging these emissions domains in your application, if they're not a perfect fit, that's fine. Just tag the closest ones that make sense and describe that in the application, that this is a particular issue for your city and it aligns with this domain or maybe across. I think as long as you've got a good understanding and we can identify what you're working on and how they broadly relate to the rest of the proposals that come in, then that's the main thing for us.
So that's the questions for now. I guess we can continue with the second part and then take the questions to the more technical aspects of the application after that presentation. Thanks,
Sigrid, and thanks, Joost, for the refresher and the answering questions.
Absolutely, and I see that Joanna is typing an answer to the last question that's come in about can pilots include Horizon-funded R&I calls? Now, I also see that the attendees can't, as a comment in the chat, that the attendees can't see any questions. Not sure if that's intended. Just wanted to let you know. Can attendees see typed answers to questions?
Sure, myself.
If not, let us know in the chat or in the Q&A, and then.
Okay, apparently not.
No, they can't.
I think what unfortunately is not possible is the voting up and down. Yeah.
Well, what we'll do in any case, if we can't get that to work in the remainder, is we'll make sure we keep going through the questions so everyone can hear them and hear the answers. But we'll consolidate them in our frequently asked questions, which is on the website as well, to make sure that everyone can get access after the session. Oh, it's just been activated. There we go. Okay, good news. Okay. So yeah, thank you for that refresher. And now to the important, but perhaps a little bit less exciting introduction to the technical side of things. Just to begin with, as I said before, we have, oh, actually, no, the timeline is always something useful to begin with. So as you can see, this is something we showed before. The call is open to today on the 5th of September. There are these sessions, as I said before, 5th to the 8th, 3 sessions on the specific topics. The deadline is the 4th of November, 1 minute to midnight CEST or CET will be then. And then between November and January, we'll be undertaking the review and selection process with a view to communicating decisions and outcomes on the 28th of February. Thereafter, we'll be looking at the contracting, as I said before, and that initial negotiation and conversation and support to the pilots that have been selected to develop their activities, their theories of change and the likes. And we'll be publishing the outcomes as well around the same time. For today, we have updated a number of documentation and links on the Net Zero Cities website, which you can see here. And if you see in the top right corner, the Call for Pilot Cities, link, which takes you to the specific page in which all of this information is held. So that's the first place we would say to go when you have questions and you want to access the information. So just to give you a quick visual, we have updated the Pilot Cities guidebook actually a few weeks ago, and that is now a digital version. So when you click on that link, it takes you to a website where the different sections and chapters of the guidebook have been put into a kind of smart interactive table so you can navigate quickly between them. But you can still also download the PDF if that's what you prefer to use. The links to the information sessions, as well as was mentioned before, the recordings and the presentations from the ones earlier this year in June and July are also on that webpage. So the updated actual documentation from today, we have finalized core guidelines, which you can see at the top there. We have a budget template, and I'll come to that a little bit later on, but that's for you to take offline and work with your collaborators on developing the budget out. We have financial guidelines, which should be published just after this webinar. They're in the final stages of some tweaks and some reference checking. And then we have a call form template as well. So obviously all of this, the call form questions is in the application portal itself. We've also created a Word version for you to take offline and to use in collaboration and to just orient yourselves to the types of questions that you'll be answering. So the registration and application portal itself. So you will see on that same webpage I showed you before, there is a link to register to the application module itself. That takes you to this page. And you'll see it's a little bit small, so apologies for that. But that first blue arrow, there is a link where you can start registering as a city admin. So what we're saying at this stage is that we would invite the cities who are intending to put an application in particular those lead cities, in the case where it might be a multi-city application, to be the first people to register with the system, to set up the proposals, and then to go through the process of inviting their collaborators from within the platform itself, which I'll show you in a moment as well. So just to be really clear, we would ask that the collaborators to cities don't register with the system yet, but wait to be invited by the relevant cities that they intend to work with. Okay, so the next slide. There's the next, oh, there we go. So this is just to quickly show you the images you'll be seeing. So you're entering obviously first name and second name, your email address, and then a password. And importantly, your password should have more than 8 characters. And then you should receive to your email address a verification code. And that verification code just goes in that box there. And if you click verify, then you'll get a second email that introduces you to the portal and provides you your username for the portal as well. So we'd firstly encourage you to save that username somewhere very safe, because you need to go back to it. And really importantly, your username will not be your email address. It will actually show up as a system generated address. It's not actually email address, but it's a kind of username, which will be your name at ckik.impact. So don't worry or freak out if you see that and think that's not my email address. This is your system username that's generated at the point of registration. You will be able to request a new username, a new password as well, received in the confirmation email that you get. Once you've done the activation process, you'll see this page next where you can add in your organization's name and the official name of your organization. And there's a drop-down menu for you to select what kind of organization you are. So for this first suite of registrations, clearly it will be cities and regions or districts. So that was just to show you the view from the website. This is also accessible from inside the Net Zero Cities portal, which obviously all the mission cities are in, and is also to be accessible to all non-mission cities as well. But we have both routes at the moment to register. You'll see at the top of the screen when you log in, there is a call for pilots banner that you can click in. And then if you use the kind of guide navigation buttons in the top right corner, you'll see that there is a call for pilots icon as well as the guidebook as well. So at this point, I get challenged to go over to the technical and do a demo of what's in the portal, but maybe I'll just quickly pause and see if there's any critical questions on that process, because I did go through quite quickly. Sigrid? If you are talking, you're on mute, by the way. Well, there's no questions, which is fine.
There is no question on the technical part. Sorry, I think my internet had a quick relapse here.
No problem, thank you. Just to note also, we are producing, which will be published hopefully by the end of today, a PDF guidance on everything I've just said. So with the same screenshots, the same workflow and process, that will be accessible as a download for you to use at your leisure. So I will, yeah, as I say, I will now try and flick over to the demo. And I am still logged in, which is good. So when you log in, you will see this landing page here. And the first thing to do is to go to the open call for proposals here. And you will see, hopefully straight away, Net Zero Cities Pilot Cities Program. If you don't see that immediately, then this drop-down menu here sometimes will revert to a different lookup. So just make sure that you can see it by toggling here, but it should stay there because we've made that default. When you click in, you'll see the headline information. This is the call module itself, including an introduction, description of the program, and the headline information about when the call opens, when it closes. And importantly, just to note, actually, on the right-hand side here, you see you'll be able to download the draft budget file, but this is also available on the website as well. So we've made it available in several places just to make sure you can find it. Then it's just a simple case of clicking create proposal, which will give you a pop-up, and this is where you fill out the headline information about your proposal. I do have one already created, so I'll pivot over to that in a minute, but this is just very simple entry. Proposed title, which you can change later, so don't worry about coming up with your snazziest title yet, so you can always change it. The lead applicant organization will be automatically filled in as you've created it. As with the grant applicant primary contact, it will be automatically you, and you can change these later as well. Planned start date and end date, so remembering it needs to be maximum of 2 years. Again, this is something that can change later down the line, so don't worry too much, but it's about what's mostly practical for you following the process of being selected and then the time that it will take for us to develop a grant agreement. So bear that in mind, but it of course can change after selection as well. In the city, you can type in and it should preload the cities that are in the system. If you're applying from a district or a region, we'd ask you that you select the city which is related to that district or region, and then you can specify further down the line whether it's a particular district in that city or a region. And then the proposed funding amount is the as specified in the core guidelines, the 0.5 million, 1 million, or 1.5 million euros. Once you do create that, it will automatically open up a proposal for you, but there should be one, I think, already ready for me to quickly show in the My Proposals and Projects area. So once you've created the proposal, this is where you'll navigate to it when you return to the system. And there's a test one here for me. So I'm just going to do a very quick navigation and an overview of what you'll see and what you'll find in different places. As I said, there's more information and a deeper dive on this functionality and where you'll need to provide what kinds of answers and information on the Wednesday webinar, where we look at the assessment and eligibility criteria. But just to get yourself oriented, the tabs across the top here, as you can see, are the different elements of your application that you'll need to complete. This first tab here, which it defaults to, is the guidance one. And in here, we've produced, or we've provided as much guidance as we think is useful to you on the different tabs. So we would really encourage you to read this first. Each of the tabs has got a little section for itself and describes what information is to be inputted there, any particular system functionality or quirks that you need to be aware of, as well as some content information from the guidebook and the core guidelines, so you can orient yourselves to the information and how it responds to the call itself. So there's one on the proposal overview, which I can show you in a minute. There's the proposal form itself, which is where the questions are. And there is a work planning section, an impact section, where we've also provided the Net Zero Cities theory of change. So you can see how the elements in the system map to this theory of change that Joost mentioned before, where we've got earlier changes, later changes, and then direct impacts and co-benefits. And then we have something around budgets, risks, and any additional files you will be uploading. And the last one is about support and collaboration. As I say, I'll do a much deeper dive on these different tabs on the Wednesday session, just to show the collaboration one over here. So support and collaboration is a window in which you can use Salesforce native functionality called Chatter, and you can ask a question to the Climate Kick support. You can see there's guidance at the top here that shows you what to do. So if you type @Climate Kick, I'll do that in the post. It should show me. There we go, Climate Kick. And if you do that and just type in what support or question you might have, once that is shared, we will receive a notification and come back to you as soon as possible. I think that was probably all I was intending to show for this bit, so I'll head back to the presentation and do a very quick summary. So these are the what we would probably suggest that you should start doing now as the core launches. The first thing is registering with the system, familiarizing yourself with the setup and all of those different tabs I've just shown. I would really encourage you just to look around, read, play, see what the different functionality is in there and how it relates to the information you'll need to provide about your proposed pilot activities. But also ask us questions and have a look at the guidance as well. It really is important to get into the system and the guidance early, as we know how much of a rush it can be at the end of a call deadline to get all the information in. Secondly is to continue to attend these webinars. Today's obviously has been much more of a focus, higher level on the pilot program and refreshing your memories. And then just this technical bit, but as I say, we'll go into much more detail on Wednesday and Thursday. And really importantly for me is to download the templates from the Pilot Cities website, the Net Zero Cities website, and the page there that I showed before. We provided a call form template so that you can see all the questions that we ask and how many maximum characters are in those, and also how they relate to the different areas of criteria. And that's a really, hopefully, really useful document for you to use in collaborating with your people you start bringing on board to your proposals. And obviously the budget template as well, so making yourself familiar with how that works and how you'll need to submit that in the system. And as I say, please do use the support, the @Climate Kick function if you're in the system, but also reach out to Pilot Cities web email address, which is there, for more content or content related or more program related questions, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. And we will continue to update our frequently asked questions. So with that, I move to a Q&A on this bit, which I rallied through quite quickly, but hopefully there were no huge surprises or anything too confusing.
Yes, there's actually no real question on the technical aspects, but there's still some that might be interesting to the whole group. So the first question is, how can we find out if the pilot idea of our city could be paired with an idea of another city and create a multi-city application?
That's a very good question. One that I don't really have a formal answer for. I know that the mission, the Net Zero Cities portal itself has functionality for you to be able to contact other cities. I'm not sure if, Joost, if you know of any other formal routes. Otherwise, I believe that a number of cities have informally just been having conversations about developing those ideas.
Yeah, no, I would say that that the portal itself, if you're registered on it, facilitates, of course, peer-to-peer exchanges between cities, and I think that would be the place where to do it.
Then we have the next question, that is, what's the latest starting date that can be selected?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Forgive me, from the top of my head, I can't remember if we specified this particularly in the core guidelines. Maybe someone could quickly check for me. I think check the core guidelines in the timeline table. I think we may have said there was a later start date in there. But off the top of my head, we anticipated that we wanted all pilot projects to be kicking off by the end of May 2023.
Okay, May 2023. The next question is actually regarding the register and the system. Should only one person per city register on the grant management system?
Initially, yes, but you can then start inviting colleagues from your organization through the functionality. And that's the one thing I didn't show. So maybe we'll go through the questions and I can show that just at the end, the invite collaborator piece.
And I assume that's also answering the next one. Is the application visible to all who represent my city, or should I invite my colleagues to see the application? So yes, please invite your colleagues. Then we have a question regarding the budget. For the moment, the only template available is the budget one.
On the website? Okay. We will check that. I believe that there should be a call form template, a Word template as well, but I will check that afterwards and make sure that it's live on the website.
And the next question is it possible to take a look at the application form, or should one register in order to see it?
Good question. Well, so as I said, there is a Word version of the template we're making available online of the call form, but actually I believe, yeah, so what you can actually do is when you look at the proposal form here, you can click download, and that will actually download all of the questions that are in the call form itself, including any text that you've already added. So you can use that as a way to check how you're doing and share with collaborators. I would say that this download here only contains the questions that we're asking in the call form. There are other elements to your application, such as the impact framework and the work plan, which aren't contained in the proposal form. So if you hit download there, you wouldn't necessarily get to see those bits. That's why we created the Word document, because it's a bit fuller in terms of its content.
But you definitely do have to register before you can obviously download this part.
But yeah, inside here, absolutely. But the actual Word document is available outside here.
The next question is regarding the consortium building. Will our city be paired after our application submission, or do we already have to apply as a consortium?
Okay. So your formal consortium for the application to the Pilot Cities program is something that you need to organize in your application process and submit with it. Remember, one of the eligibility criteria is there needs to be at least 2 legal entities, and the proposal must be led by the city or relevant administration. What you might be referring to, which is slightly different, is the twinning program. So when the 30 projects are selected, we will go through a process of calling for twin cities, as we're calling them, to apply and then be paired up in 2s or 3s with the different pilot projects that have been selected through the call. So that's a slightly different thing, and they will be allocated following selection. But for your formal consortium, for your Pilot Cities program application, that needs to happen in the application process itself, and you need to organize that before the 4th of November.
Thank you, Will. And then we have another one more on a technical aspect. Can we change the project title after registering?
Yes, so it's on the proposal details. I can just show this live, which is always good. Proposal project name. Just hit edit and then change it to new name or anything else and hit save. Okay, it's probably a good thing to see while we're doing the demo is if you get an error, sometimes that means that a particular field hasn't yet been completed. You can see the stars here, which show what are mandatory fields. So that one there, I got something saying that this hasn't been completed yet. If you do get that, just put some dummy text in until you can properly fill it out at a later stage. And there we go. The name is changed.
And then there is a last question at this point, at least. Do you encourage cities to collaborate and create multi-city applications, or is there an equal chance for cities, particularly small and medium-sized cities, to be selected without other cities in a coalition with local stakeholders? I believe we had this question in one of the last webinars, and it might be included in the FAQs, but it's been voted quite a few times, so maybe you want to say something to this one.
Yeah, sure. So there's no requirement to collaborate with other cities, nor is it formally, fundamentally in the assessment criteria and selection criteria something that is automatically advantageous. We do ask in the actual call form itself, where there are multiple cities, for a rationale for why these cities are working together. There needs to be a clear reason why the collaboration makes sense for all cities involved, rather than just trying to pack the proposal with as many cities as possible, as if that were to be seen as an advantage in some way. It won't be seen an advantage in and of itself. If it's clearly well justified and there's very, very clear advantages for impact, scalability, and other criteria in the call, then clearly it will influence how they can respond to those particular criteria. But in and of itself, it is an advantage.
And I think that just goes back to what I said in the beginning. We're trying to be as non-prescriptive as possible and really encourage you to think about what it is that you feel you need to do and what is most valuable to achieve and to unlock through this pilot cities action. If there's a compelling reason to do something with other cities because of that being your understanding of that's where you're at, then that's absolutely fine. But there can be equally compelling reasons to do something focused within your city and working with other partners in your city alone. Again, so you have that freedom, and we don't have preferences in that sense, or value one thing over the other. I just wanted to say that I spotted in the chat a question as well. The call text says that supporting SMEs are eligible partners. What about larger consultancies? Also, must any companies be located in the pilot city itself? So the second question has already been answered. No, there's no requirement for other partners necessary to be located in the pilot city itself. And larger consultancies versus SMEs, I think we're open about the kind of partners that you're choosing. There's no preference for one or the other, or exclusion criteria around that. Again, I think the framing of one of the other questions on this point made me think where the person asked, should the partner be in the city itself? Again, the minimum is for one partner. That's not to say that we encourage you to only have one partner. I think that's important to mention.
Maybe I can just quickly add, in terms of the eligibility, whether it's an SME or larger consultancy, important is that the relevance of the partner to the pilot is demonstrated. And we have one more question coming in. If we can do the application as a group of cities, does the proposal let us write down all the cities participating, or should we pick one as main representative? So I assume that's about the lead partner here.
Yeah, good question. So you both really, but there needs to be a named lead city, and that will be appearing on the screen here, where you can actually see it's got the lead applicant organization, which would be the main lead city, and they will be the coordinator of the grant agreement effectively. But also in the call form itself, you'll see that the first question we ask is how many cities are involved. And if you were to select 3, for example, then it will ask you to then, as I said before, justify the rationale for the multi-city bid, and then provide the names of all 3, including the other information that we need. So it will be listed in there, and but it does need to be named which city is the lead on this page here. It's always helpful as well if you create a proposal with the lead city, because then you don't have to change anything after that. Just a handy tip.
Thanks, Will. And last question here, quick questions on access to the application forms template. A city administrative or representative needs to be granted access to the grant management website and then get the templates from it? Question mark.
No, so I can probably just quickly show this as well, actually. That was for me. This is the public Net Zero Cities website, and you'll see all the pilot cities over here, as I showed before when this loads. Okay. The call form template is here. So this is where you actually see the application form that we've created in a Word document to match what is in the system that you can use to then collaborate offline. The point around collaborators being invited, I can quite quickly show that here. Once you've created the proposal as the city, you can then invite a collaborator by using this button here. If they're already in the system, then you can start finding them. But if the likelihood is they won't be in the system, if you're adding someone new, you just click next. And then you type in their information, what their role is and their email address, and then they will then receive an invitation to the system, which will give them access to the proposal as well.
I can see no further open question in the chat. There doesn't seem to be anything else either. So if there's nothing else, oops, here we got some quick questions just before we're closing. Will there be a technical problem if I register now as a lead city representative and later decide to join another consortium instead?
Yes, potentially. So what the way that the system is set up is because of the requirement that a city, there may be only one application per city, or a city may appear in only one application. The system is set up to recognize when if you create a second proposal or someone else in your organization creates a second proposal, it will stop you from doing that and then tell you who to contact, as in the other person who's created the proposal. I'm actually not entirely sure if that is the same that happens if they're invited as a collaborator. If that does happen, just please reach out to us through the email address or through the support function, and we'll look into it and resolve it for you. But as before, my advice is always to do these things sooner rather than later, so that we can catch them, work them through, fix anything we need to fix, and then move things forward quickly for you. But that is a very important thing actually to mention. The eligibility criterion around the only one application per city, that effectively means even for districts and regions, that you may only appear in one and submit in one. And the principle for this is to avoid double funding effectively.
Thank you, Will. If I just created an account on the grant management system, can someone else from my city create one, or should I invite collaborators? I am not the main representative of the mission. Did I just make a mistake, and should I delete my account?
No, I think that's fine. You can obviously invite them into the proposal, and I think you can also invite them. There will be more guidance, system guidance on this, things like adding contacts and organization information. And there will be ways to designate certain roles against the organization as we go through the next 2 months. So again, don't worry, just contact us if you have any concerns or things don't look exactly right. This is also a new system for us, so we're learning as well, and we're open about that. So let's just make sure that we're constantly talking and working through problems. And the more that we learn about things that might not work properly for you or seem confusing, the better we can improve the system, but also improve our guidance as well.
The next question is regarding the funding. Will the funds be directed to partners of the call, or have they to go through the city administration?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
The funding, will it be paid all to the city administration and have to go through the city administration, or will it go directly to the partners?
Okay. So disbursements, I don't have the answer to that yet. That's something we'll be planning with our finance teams. So it would be something we would inform you about through the grant agreement process or through the decision letter. I'm not sure which one yet, but with that's details we don't have to hand yet.
And another question regarding the twinning process. If we apply as a consortium, can you explain how the twinning will happen in the second stage?
The twinning, so the twinning is a separate call in itself. So if you apply as a consortium of cities, for example, then you would still, in theory, be allocated 2 to 3 twin cities to learn from your process. And that, because it is a separate learning program, it's a learning program that runs in parallel, but it's a separate call and a separate process. There's not much more detail I can give on that because it is yet to be designed in terms of the process of application.
But I believe there is a part of committing to mentoring a twinning city in the application. Right?
Yeah, so in the form itself, there is a declaration box where you will declare that you will be part of the city learning program and therefore connecting up with 2 to 3 twin cities.
I think that's it for now. There is one question that Joanna is already answering in the chat, which is regarding to funding as well. Maybe we can still answer this live here as well. Will the funding be paid periodically or as a lump sum?
That information is included in both the core guidelines and the financial guidelines that will be published later today. I don't know if Joanna's actually already typing this up, but there is an initial tranche. There is a second tranche post successful and approved reporting after the first year, and then there is a final amount upon final reporting, approval of final reporting.
And that's it for now. There's no more question as I can see, but obviously there's still the possibility to ask questions in the upcoming webinars and also through our pilot cities email address that you can see on the screen. So Willie, I'm not sure if you want to add anything or.
No, I think just to say thank you for attending. Thank you, Joost, for your contributions and everyone for their questions, and Barbara for hosting, Sigrid for moderating, Joanna, I know in the background answering questions. Do come along to the future webinars. They will be recorded. We will give presentations out and get in touch when you have questions. That's the main thing. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Great week.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.